Everybody just pause for a moment. Finish what you're saying and pause for a moment. I've noticed a lot of tables had everybody talking, so I'm curious, how many tables need more time? Raise your hand. Okay, pretty good. So just pause for a moment and tune in to how you're left feeling, or the thoughts that are in your mind having shared at your table. Current reality and intentions or aspirations in being here. And for a moment, just tune into something that's alive and true within you in this moment. It could be a wondering or a gratitude, or maybe you're really touched by something that somebody said. Just see what's some kind of reverberation within you of having had this close encounter with other myselves at your table. And then just take, let's say, maybe 2 more minutes at your table and just give voice to what are you left with? What's something you're grateful for? What touched you? What surprised you? What inspired you? Just something that you notice that's alive within you. Just really brief little sound bites so everybody in the table can just share something that you're left with having had that experience together, okay? With your table.
A learning.
Thank your friends and come on back. And then pause for a moment as you tune in and name to yourself the feeling that you're left with. The feeling, like the emotional tone, the quality of aliveness that's most alive within you. Just name that to yourself, okay? Could be inspired, moved, sad, grateful, whatever it is. So one mindfulness practice is a really good way to begin to weave mindfulness into your daily life is after every meeting is over, after every conversation is over. You could even do this with texts if you like. Whenever you have a brief kind of close encounter with another person, when that situation's over, just pause, tune in and see what the feeling is that you're left with and name that feeling. Name that feeling. And there's a clinical condition that is a precursor of all the stress-related diseases that's called alexithymia. It's a Greek word, alexithymia, no words for feelings. And people with alexithymia aren't in touch with what they're experiencing at a conscious level, so that the stress has to build and build and build. The whispers turn into screams before you realize that you're in trouble. So by learning how to tune into your own felt sense of being alive and name it, you're hooking up the insula, the part of the brain that tunes into your body, with your frontal cortex that has the capacity to kind of discern what you're experiencing, and your verbal centers, and you're building neuronal connections that will protect you from stress accumulating. Okay? So this is one way that if you did nothing else leaving this seminar, but just name your feelings more often after experiences, that could be a really life-changing and stress-reducing technique right there. So moment to moment, okay, that video is not going to work. Okay, let's go on to this. Take both of your hands and put them out like this for a moment, okay? In one hand, imagine that you can hold all of the moments of your life. I'm going to come down and give you guys some love, okay? Imagine you can hold all of the moments in your life that you're awake and mindful, okay? All the moments in your life where if your child's talking to you, you're really listening. If you're reading a book, you're really reading the book. If you're driving, you're really driving. You're drinking that fine bottle of wine, you're really tasting it. Okay, all the moments of your life that really sparkle, that where you're mindful and embracing the joys and the sorrows that each moment brings you, okay? Showing up for your life. On the other hand, imagine you can reach out and hold all the moments of your life that have gone by mindlessly unnoticed, unheard, untasted, unfelt, unloved, unknown, that you can't push the rewind button for, okay? And then for a moment, just see if you can put your hands in a gesture that represents the relative proportion of the moments of your life that you've been awake and mindful and fully present, and the moments that have gone by never to be seen again that you lost. Okay, put your hands in a gesture of the relative proportion. Okay? And as you do that, you have two choices here. I suggest, actually, before we go to the choice, give me some percentages, okay? What are some relative percentages of mindful moments as compared to mindless moments? 30-70? What else? 20-80? Yeah. Let's say it's 20%, okay? 20% that you're awake, 80% room for improvement, okay? Is 20% good enough for you? You know, if your child gets to be 10 years old and you only really were there for 2 years of that 10 years, is that good enough? All that money you put into really good food and you only taste 20%, is that good enough, you know? If you live to be 100 and you only really lived 20, is that good enough? So that if you want to get some fire in your belly without chili about learning this stuff, to just appreciate what's at stake. Do you get it? And to appreciate how much room there is for improvement. I've never met anybody that's at 100%, okay? But I have worked, over the years, we've worked with tens of thousands of people, and we've seen people shift the balance. And we've seen their kids come to us and say thank you. And their wives come to us and say thank you. And their husbands come to us and say thank you. And their employers come to us and say, how do we take this to our other divisions? Yeah? So this is really what's at stake. This isn't just some kind of nice stress management hobby, okay? This is really important stuff. Okay, and it can be as simple as this. This is a diagram from University of Wisconsin Medical Center where they introduce mindfulness practice. To bring this into the schools, to bring this into your department, it can be as simple as inviting people frequently throughout the day to pause. In some organizations we work with, they'll get a bell, set of bells, or one of those little nice metal, bars that you with a little hammer that you ring. And let's say it's on Hector's desk today, and just random times throughout the day, Hector rings the bell. And anybody within earshot is invited to just pause and come home to themselves. To be mindful of breathing in, be mindful of breathing out, to feel their feet touching the floor, to hear the sounds around them, to notice what's alive and true within them, just for a moment to connect with reality, to wake up, to come out of the daydream and get present. And then, once we've paused, to proceed, to pause and got present, then we proceed. We go back to whatever we're doing. And we've seen this in many organizations where this just becomes, and let's say tomorrow Hector leaves it on Marco's desk. And tomorrow Marco leaves it on Elsa's desk. And it just sort of moves around. Some people ring it frequently throughout the day. Other people totally forget. But it can just be a nice little wave of encouragement. If you're on the phone with a business meeting, you don't have to just go silent on people. You just keep talking and, you know. But this is just a sweet way to kind of integrate it into a workplace, just to begin to inoculate the culture.
Maybe the Google pause.
At Google, every meeting is encouraged to begin with people coming into the room and somebody who's facilitating the meeting say, let's begin with a G pause, like a Google pause. Let's just take a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes to have everybody gather their precious human resources and get present for this meeting. To let go of the last one, to get fully present here in the room. Maybe even to remember or think of all the stakeholders who will be touched by the decisions we make or the work we do together. And just consider that. Just a few quiet moments of guided practice or silent practice so everybody can arrive and really be here together rather than scattered and distracted, okay? We can only manage what we monitor, and if we pay attention, the more we listen, the more we will hear. The more we hear, the more and more deeply we will understand. And there's no bottom to the barrel of that. This is an image that's like a small, like a peso held up to the sky, collecting photons from that and going, oh my gosh, there's tens of thousands of galaxies in that one little part of the sky if we look carefully at it. How much more would we hear if we really learned how to be mindful? And as William James reminded us, the greatest revolution in education is to make the nervous system our ally instead of our enemy. We can really learn how to do that. So since you're working in education, we'd like to take a short while and just give you some, like a big global view of some of this work to inspire your faith, your confidence, your interest. When I first started doing research in this work, it was over here, okay? You know, I was gluing sensors on people's skulls and measuring brain waves on a Beckman polygraph with ink pens spitting ink on paper, okay? Now it's all on my laptop, and it's so cool. And you can see this is just the trends in the research in mindfulness. You know, when we first started doing first corporate and organizational programs, it was down here. And there wasn't a whole lot of data to show people. We knew it worked. You know, people clearly, there was a lot of subjective data, but there wasn't a lot of evidence-based work. And now it's going through the roof. If you add to this, keeping in mind that meditation is just one, mindfulness is just one kind of meditation, okay? How many kinds of music do you think there are? Any guesses? Yeah. So meditation is like that. Like how many kinds of music or how many kinds of medicine are there? It's said that the Buddha alone taught 84,000 different practices, okay? Mindfulness is a collection, a category, like jazz or classical. Mindfulness is a zone of different practices for waking up, for being fully present. And there are other kinds of practices as well. So this is showing the increase in research on yoga, mindfulness specifically, and other kinds of meditation. And you see the trend here. What we're talking about is to tap into this zone of our precious internal human resources. You do have the slide in there someplace. And to integrate these into how we work together on teams and how we do our work in the world. And to take these inner resources and express them in terms of how we manage our lives. And you can see, you know, imagine trying to do a good job of our work in relationships and organizations without really intentionally cultivating these resources and the advantages that we can find by tapping into these and helping people to consciously develop those qualities and capacities. So it's said that we're living in VUCA times, which in English is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. This comes from the Army War College, trying to describe the modern battlefield that is so out of control and so complex. And as Einstein said, we are not going to find solutions to the complex problems of these times at the same level of consciousness or the same level of thinking that created those problems. If humanity is to survive, we need to raise the level of our consciousness. We need to think and look and listen and understand in deeper kinds of ways. And these kinds of practices that you can learn for yourself or encourage your students to teach, to learn, or you can build into how you do education together, helps a whole organization to bring a deeper kind of wisdom to work. How could we do it without it? How many of you think that the waves of change and complexity and VUCA-ness in our lives and our world are going to get any smaller going into the future? Anybody? So as we would say in Seattle and in Hawaii, surf is up. It's time to learn how to ride these waves, yeah? And given that it's probably not going to get any less stressful or any less VUCA, learning these skills, I think in this day and age, how could you imagine having an education system without them? Yeah. It's as though as things are becoming more and more complex, time is ever more compressed and more pressurized. We're trying to put more information into more moments. How can you do this without evolving and developing your nervous system and your mental capacities? So interestingly, the word VUCA in Zulu means to wake up, which I think is very cool, like in mindfulness. And but when we wake up to our life, rather than drinking a lot of alcohol or staying really busy or distracting ourselves with computer games or not listening to the people that are trying to get our attention, the problems are going to escalate, okay? So to a word of warning as we're getting started here, it takes courage to practice mindfulness. It takes courage to wake up. It takes courage to read the news and see what's going on in the world and look at your kids and be a really good mom or dad instead of just another alcoholic, stressed out, distracted parent, okay? But it's worth it. Václav Havel, when he addressed the U.S. Congress a number of years ago, said, without a revolution in the sphere of human consciousness, nothing in our world is going to change for the better. And if we don't learn to evolve our consciousness, that we're really looking at some huge challenges and problems to come. So while many people are watching lots of sitcoms and distracting themselves with the reassuring lie, and maybe not so many people are going to the inconvenient truth, there is something to be said for waking up to this. And I only have, let's see, do we have this in? Yes, we have this in Spanish. One person's work I'd like to bring to your attention is Joanna Macy, who's done a lot of work on how people can develop their capacity to deal with overwhelming suffering and pain and distress in communities or societies. And she has this 4-part model, which is a whole workshop in itself, but we just wanted to introduce the idea of this. She says, rather than going straight to looking at all the pain and the suffering of the world or your family or your society, begin with gratitude. Be mindful of what you're grateful for in your life. There's food in your refrigerator and shoes on your feet, and your children are well, and your heart is still beating. Begin with gratitude. And then having lubricated your system and uplifted yourself by counting your blessings and contemplating gratitude, then turn the focus of your awareness to look at the challenges that are part of your life or your world, the suffering that's there, on the foundation of the strength that the gratitude gives you. And through mindfully looking deeply into those complexities, then to see with new eyes, with a deeper wisdom, a deeper love, a different kind of creativity. And then to be able to carry that kind of deeper wisdom into action and to go forth with that. Okay? So if you want to learn more about her work, go to joannamacy.net. Wealth of resources, but we just wanted to bring, she's a friend and a teacher of ours. So again, looking at new horizons and new possibilities. We're not going to do this today. I think we might do that tomorrow. So over the last 40 years or so, we've worked with a lot of people around the globe. We've taught at many universities. We've worked in many large organizations. We'd like to just speak briefly to some of the trends. We spoke briefly about the work at Google that we've been doing after the Search Inside Yourself program. We were invited, the success of that. We were invited to develop the follow-on program for them. It started off that at Google, there were just maybe one or two people at each site interested in meditation. So we do these big telecourses where people from 24 locations would come together and we'd meditate together and we'd talk about these practices, and people would have a community in a global sense. Then people started learning enough that they could then lead meditations at their site. Then other people started learning. Every Google site now has people leading meditations just about every day, if not 3 or 4 times a day. Student-led, if you will, which is how they like to have that done. The Consortium of Academic Health Centers in the States, the last time we looked, it's probably up towards 80 now, had curriculums that incorporated positive psychology, mindfulness into the curriculum. And this has grown. I remember when this was back at 20 or 30 universities. This is an increasing trend. Our friend started a mindfulness and law program at Berkeley about 8 years ago, Rhonda McGee, and we saw her last fall at a conference, and we said, Brenda, how many law schools have taken inspiration from your mindful law class at Berkeley and started mindful law in their university? She said there's about 40, 45 law schools now that are teaching mindfulness. If you're interested in the research on mindfulness specifically, you have this slide in your mix. The GO Association for Mindfulness Research, American Mindfulness Research Association, is a great clearinghouse of mindfulness in business and mindfulness in clinical practice, all the research on that. The whole field of contemplative science is exploding. These conferences started about 12 years ago now. And at each of these conferences, there's been representatives from 300 to 400 universities presenting presentations, poster sessions, talking about the roles of mindfulness and other contemplative practices in healthcare and business efficiency and student burnout and stress and faculty health. This is an emerging field, which is really quite exciting to look at. Kind of ancient wisdom meets modern technology meets education and the crisis of our times. At Max Planck Institute in Europe, they found, this is kind of a fuzzy slide, but they found basically that different brain systems are associated with different kinds and qualities of meditation. And they've developed a brilliant system that works with mindfulness and attention, that cultivates compassion and pro-social, loving kindness and emotional intelligence. and that helps people gain a larger kind of systems view of the complex interrelationships of things. And this is like the new mindfulness, cultivating quality of presence, emotional intelligence, and kind of cognitive expanded perspective on what's going on in the world as a way of education. Brilliant work from a woman named Tanya Singer. British Parliament a couple of years ago published a study called Mindful Nation UK. How many of you read this study? We sent the link on this, so you've got a link for it in your materials. It's a brilliant piece, and in the 4 areas that they were recommending that were vital for the thriving of British society to thrive, one of the 4 areas was education, the other was healthcare, the third was criminal justice, and the 4th was in organizations.
In the workplace.
And the workplace, yes. Wisdom 2.0 conferences, how many of you have heard of these? Make a note, Google Wisdom 2.0, I think on Vimeo or YouTube. They have all the videos of the past conferences. This started off with a ragtag bunch of Silicon Valley mindfulness geeks and people doing yoga who were in leadership positions saying, this is really good for business. Let's get together with people and talk about it. Now the conferences are usually 2,000 to 3,000 people, leaders from way beyond just high tech in organizations, talking about the vital role of these kinds of inner sciences for increasing human potential and productivity and reducing stress and bringing greater wisdom and greater spirit, greater creativity into work. Fantastic. The Mind and Life Institute for the last 30 years has been bringing together inner scientists and contemplatives and yogis and people like the Dalai Lama and people running research institutions like Max Planck Institute and Stanford and other places into dialogue to try and understand what's the nature of reality. And through that understanding, how can we learn to flourish as human society and individuals to reduce suffering and to promote greater understanding. One of the initiatives that came out of Mind and Life Institute was the Academy for a Contemplative and Ethical Leadership. How many of you think that the world could use more ethical leaders? And how many of you can appreciate that to really be an ethical leader, you have to know yourself in a deep way and be pretty tuned into what's going on in the world around you to make wise decisions. So this is basically based on the premise that there are thousands of leadership development programs in the world, but how many of them are really focusing on giving people these kinds of skill sets to be able to lead their organizations or their governments or their businesses or their schools. And it's a brilliant initiative, and maybe there's something in this for TecMilenio in terms of a new marketing hook that might be worth looking at. If you can read the English, just take a look at some of the themes that are being addressed by this initiative. And just consider the value of bringing this kind of high-level education. The faculty for this were Peter Senge, Dan Goleman, the emotional intelligence guy, Otto Scharmer from MIT, Arthur Zonich, who's a quantum physicist, Deborah Chapman, who's head of one of the Ivy League girls' schools. Pretty great faculty. Bringing this all together. So all this is to say you're on the right track with your ecosystem of knowledge. Also make a note, Atlas of Emotions. And to just help you appreciate, in terms of the positive psychology and, psychology in general, learning how to be more mindful, develop better research skills, to really understand what is the nature of mind and emotions and human potential. The Atlas of Emotions is helping us map kind of emotional architecture, kind of like a periodic table of human qualities and states of being, mapping states of trepidation to terror on the spectrum of fear, mapping annoyance to frustration to bitterness and vengeance and fury and anger, the different flavors and intensities of sadness. And in the positive psychology, from sensory pleasure to amusement and peace and pride, wonder, ecstasy. So the science in this work, when I first started doing research, we had a bookshelf about as wide as this table and about this high, with every book in print and every research study worth reading on human consciousness and human potential. And look at what's available now. It's amazing. And then at Stanford, there's the C-Care program, the Center for Compassion and Altruism Research and Education, that's looking into the science of compassion, compassion and technology. Again, you're on the right track here, C-Care. And finally, I think, we're about through this. There's a wonderful website that was put together by Dan Goleman, who did the emotional intelligence work, and his wife Tara, called Join a Force for Good. That has, if you're putting together curriculum in any of these kinds of disciplines or practices, this website has a wealth of videos and material all in one place that really is a great aid for people working in education. So just one more of these trends, and then we'll do some more practice. We ran across this at the Smithsonian Institute a few years ago, where they had an exhibit. And I just love this image that was in the Smithsonian of, here's somebody just taking a moment to pause in the midst of everybody, kind of busily going about their work. So we got that? No, we'll do that later.
Okay, so we're going to shift gears now from looking at the macro picture to have some more experiential practice. Is that okay? Everybody's ready? Good. So we'd like to start with some focusing, some mindfulness to build concentration, to quiet and calm the mind. And one really simple and very effective way of doing this, we're going to work with awareness of breath and the movement of our hands and a word. So how this works is just set down any books and sit up straight and comfortable. Maybe uncross your legs and really kind of ground yourself. And then just bring your attention naturally to the movement, the inhalation, exhalation, the sensation of breath, just as it is. You're not trying to breathe any special way or change your breathing. Just notice, find your breath and just follow it, just so that you know when your breath is coming in and you experience the breath leaving the body, and also see where you notice that sensation, maybe at the nostrils, maybe in the belly or chest. How do you experience that direct gift of life with each breath? And now, as you feel the breath, the inhalation, the breath coming in, just let your hands float up, just kind of following the breath. So up, and then as you exhale, coming down. And the breath is guiding, the breath is leading, the hands are just following, just mirroring. So some breaths may be longer, some may be shorter. And the hands are just connecting the body and the breath, the awareness together. And now we're going to add just a simple word. So we're unifying the body, the speech, the mind together. As you breathe in, you can just say to yourself in English or Spanish, you could say, here, aquí, now, ahora. Just silently to yourself, just here, aquí on the in-breath, ahora on the out-breath. Or even simply, you could say in, out. One other you could use is calming as the breath comes in and smiling as you exhale, that smile of just letting go. Somebody's home, releasing, not taking ourselves too seriously. So just choose a simple word that works for you. Not moving the hands any faster or slower than you actually feel the breath moving through the body. And you may notice that each breath is different, it's changing. Well, they may be pretty balanced for you. Eyes can be open or closed, however is more comfortable. Did calming and smiling. There's a longer version of calming, smiling. That's breathing in, I calm my body and mind. Breathing out, I smile. So you could use the long version. Breathing in, I calm my body and mind. Breathing out, I smile, I let go, I release, I open. And as you get quieter and deeper, sometimes if the hands feels like too much movement, you can just relax the movement and just stay with the sensation of the in and out breath of the word. Now just pause for a moment and check in with yourself and see what you notice. Just from a few brief minutes like this, what do you discover? What's present for you? How would you describe what you're feeling or what you notice in your mind or your body? Any changes?
Sample or...
Maybe just get a few samples. What do you notice from just a few quiet moments like that? Any reflections? You can just call it out. What is there more of or less of now? More calm?
I noticed that I was, after a while, I was making the movement like automatic.
Very good noticing. So then when you noticed that, what did you do? Yeah, just go back to the breath, really. So did everyone hear? He said after a little while, he noticed that the hands movement was starting to just become more automatic. and not as connected with the breath. So that's a moment of mindfulness, of recognizing that. Then you can adjust and shift the attention. It's great. Good. So do some the body scan.
Let's do the breath and the heartbeat.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good. We'll build on this.
So, talking with some of you during lunch, the name Thich Nhat Hanh came up. How many of you have read any of Thich Nhat Hanh's work on mindfulness or aware of him? Okay. He's nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize by Martin Luther King at one point, a Vietnamese teacher, and really a master at teaching mindfulness in modern times. Thich Nhat Hanh talks about mindfulness is like a light that you shine upon things. Like shine the light of your awareness on Michelle for a moment, okay?
Oh, Joel.
and just let her come vividly alive. And look around the room and just imagine that your mindfulness is like a beam of awareness or attention, and let that beam of awareness come to focus on somebody on a different table from you right now, and just see them. Another human being just like me who wants to be happy and wants to be well. Okay? So to appreciate that this quality of mindfulness is a precious human resource that usually, just gets wasted, kind of happens in an unconscious level and doesn't get really wisely invested. But if we really learn how to listen and focus in, whole new worlds of discovery are available to us, okay? Let's do another mindfulness practice here for a moment. Come back to being mindful of your breathing, okay? And you can either move your hands with the breath, or you can just maybe touch your belly or your chest and just maybe begin by breathing deep, okay? So you can really feel the breath. Feel the lungs expanding, the diaphragm kind of pushing out with the inhalation, coming up as you exhale. Feel the breath, and then let the breath become natural, effortless. And gently smile to yourself as you observe and are mindful of the breathing, just with a sense of curiosity and wonderment and gratitude. And just see what it's like to use the breath to learn how to have continuous flow of awareness, moment to moment, the sensations of breathing in and the little pause at the top of the inhalation, and then the sensations of breathing out. And the little pause at the bottom of the exhalation. And then, here comes another breath. Check it out. So that we use mindfulness of breathing to develop a continuous flow of awareness rather than a flickering awareness. Moment to moment, breath by breath. Okay? And now let's bring our awareness to a subtler level and see if you can bring your mindfulness now to experiencing the pulse of your beating heart. Okay? And if it's helpful, you can touch your heart, or you can touch your neck or your wrist. And be mindful of the sensations of the heart beating and pulsing, moment to moment to moment. You're not thinking about it, you're actually directly sensing it. And as you do, be mindful of how the breath, rhythm of the breath and the rhythm of the heartbeat sync up together, and that the heartbeat actually changes as you breathe in, speeds up a little bit, and as you breathe out, the heart rate actually slows down. See if you can actually sense that. Sense of curiosity and discovery, wonder. And then going to an even subtler level now, see if you can actually sense the beating of your heart rippling out through your body. Can you feel it in other parts of your abdomen or your chest?
Or even your fingertips.
See how many places within the body you can actually sense the ripple of the pulse rippling out through your flesh. And can you sense, if you were to even listen more deeply, that the pulse of your heart actually extends out beyond your skin? It radiates out into the air and the space around you, kind of broadcasting, this is the quality and the state of my being. I'm at peace, I'm at ease, or I'm stressed or fearful or anxious. That waveform goes out and communicates to the world and to the people around you. You see this sometimes when you're with pets or animals or horses, wild animals, or with people. But can you also sense that you're being bathed in the waveforms of the vibrations and the pulse of the heart's beating at the table around you? And just listen into that space of possibilities to see what images or feelings may come to mind. Okay. And then you're resting in this deep and subtle awareness. Now, if your eyes are closed, let them gently open, but as your eyes open, let them be soft and relaxed. Mindful of the breathing, the pulse. And just tune into how did those few minutes of just paying attention to what's going on all the time in a conscious way, how did that experience, what are you left with from that experience? How many people found some value in this, listening to the breath, the heartbeat, in that kind of way? How would you describe the value? What was worthwhile in that for you? In Spanish or English? Just call it out. Peaceful. What else? Harmonic. Like having a moment with yourself. Okay. Feeling alive. Relaxing, balance. How many of you think you could do that on your own? Okay? It's not that complicated.
How many of you would like to have more of that feeling in your life?
Yeah. So what we're trying to point out here is what we're talking about is so close, is so accessible, so often ignored, but these are spaces and places and qualities of being that we can come back to again and again and again throughout the day, to pause, get present, and proceed. And how many of you have generally speaking, gotten some value from the few exercises we've done so far? Yeah? And would like to do more of that? Okay?
It's kind of like learning how to press the clear button on your inner calculator, clear the screen, because we're putting one thing on top of another all the time. We're not digesting it, assimilating, and clearing before we add new experiences, so it gets confused and chaotic.
So I'm thinking, we've got a few minutes here before we take a break. Let's just have some mindful reflection at your table, okay? About what would be the value for you as individuals in looking more deeply into this kind of education, learning these techniques, exploring the science, becoming more capable in these ways. And what would be the value for you and your team or your university or your department or what have you to integrate more of this kind of education or learning or ways of working together into your lives and work? Just one brief story, and then you can reflect on this. We were invited to help develop a graduate program at Mahidol University in Thailand, which is the main university for Thailand. And it was the Contemplative Education and Transformational Learning program. And it wasn't a separate department. It wasn't like psychology or engineering or social work. It was the hub program, which meant that all of the other departments and disciplines in the university tapped into that hub to help their people be more successful at doing engineering or medicine or whatever it was that they were doing. That these were like fundamental human resource skills that needed to be available to all the different curriculums. I just want to sow the seeds of, might you find some version of that in your curriculum? Okay? So at your table, we've got about 7 minutes, then I'll ring the bell, and we'll have a break, and maybe somebody will tell us about the break. Just reflect personal value and shared or collective value in the principles and practices or ideas we've shared.
And the practice is that whoever is speaking, everyone else, you're giving your full attention to whoever is speaking. And if you notice your mind is wandering off, you just bring it back. Just come, keep returning and starting again. Okay. Thank you.